What do they value? They value new work, new clients, growth, increased margins. They value something along those lines, right? Let's just say, and that's what those companies, consulting companies, value. They want replacement clients because in the commercial world, the work does not continue like it does in the Department of Defense. There's nobody with a 10-year contract in the commercial world. And I will tell you, and I think you remember the story, when we sold federal work to the division of Accenture called Avanade, it was run as a wholly owned affiliate. The guy running it had no government experience other than one experience early in his career on electric boat as a junior analyst with Accenture 30 years before, counting parts. And he said, this better be worth it. And a couple of years later, I was in Seattle and he came to get some food at our lunch. And I looked over and he's passed away since. I said, Mitch, are we worth it? He goes, oh my God, yes. He goes, you're the only accounts that appear on the books for beyond 5 years. Because we have commercial accounts, 6 months, 1 year, 1 year. Because your line goes and goes and goes. He goes, I love it. So federal business differentiates in that way. But the companies that do federal, that's why they do that. They can survive like that. The consulting companies have to churn. You have to bring in new clients for the work you have. Yes, they are in places like General Motors for years. But I'm telling you, that took decades to build that brand. So what do they actually value? And I think a lot of junior consultants, depending on experience, junior consultants, mid-level consultants come in with the idea that I'm valued. That's why you brought me here, because I offer you something. It's not completely the case, right? And then when you move up, you start, it's sort of like all this Huxley Brave New World. They begin to show you how it really works. And when you become a manager, you get 3 or 4 analysts, and they go, you have to marshal these idiots. And you have to motivate them to do these long hours, these long days, because that's what's going to drive your value. You got to make this impact on this project, or you have to drive this home at this level of value. And then when you move up to senior manager and then director, it's now you need to win new work and you need to break into hunting from farming. So I got to the hunting and farming success levels, and I was burning out because the number never comes down. It only goes up. And I think even Brigitte pointed out at one point, I was with colleagues, we were at a barbecue or something, I was laughing at people who were getting ripped for having bad reviews and bad delivery reviews. And it's a culture of, they're going to take the hit. Like that person goes down. That's just the reality. Maybe it's like this in law firms for people who can't bring in the accounts, but someone's going to be the magnet for the problem. And that's where the executives are going to look. The consultancies are different in a couple of ways. The first way is some of them are auditors and some aren't. That affects the business because the audit businesses like KPMG are owned by the partners. So when you hit them up for money, it's actually their money. It's not from the firm. It's coming out of their bottom line. If I need 50 grand to chase something, you're asking a partner to invest in it. The money would be coming to them. And then the second thing is not all the consultancies focus on the same things. So if you go to Accenture Commercial, they've got the food business. They're doing the Chick-fil-A of the future. They've had, if you want to get mad at the double window system, the Joe Pesci axiom, they always F you at the drive-through. That was an Accenture idea. Accenture built that as inner consulting. So the different consultancies have different chunks of the world they focus on. They compete and they have differentiation. You have to know that going in. It is like you say, if you leave as a generalist from one to the next, the view doesn't change. But if you say, hey, they're building this new practice, like for example, Accenture got really big in AI, I'm going to go down that road. I can help differentiate and move up the chain, right? I can become a senior leader. So there's that. And surviving through those different places in your career, from analyst to, vice president, the view is different for different people. It depends on where you're coming in and where you were before. And again, what wherewithal you have. And that is a lot of luck. I'll stop talking. It's a lot of luck. I lucked out a lot of times. Things went my way. No question.
Yeah, well, so actually Box of Rocks from Booz Allen, who's sitting on top of Advana, named Graham Nash, or something like that. Total Box of Rocks. He's floated up to VP because he landed the contract, right? And Comptroller went all in on Booz and didn't want to recompete it. And he's been sitting on the cash cow and getting promoted because he gets revenue. He's still an idiot.
That's what matters in their business. That's what it comes down to. I'm not going to name any, so I realize I'm wearing a corporate shirt for the place I currently work, which is owned by GD. So I'm going to watch my mouth. But I had a run-in with a VP at a company that was extremely abusive, just personally abusive. He was a former Marine and really just being nasty. My boss sat me down and said, he brought in X amount of $1 million last year. Remind me what you brought in. Okay, so rank has its privileges. That matters here. So as long as he's bringing in killer contracts, he gets a lot of room with us. So if he mouths off to you in a meeting, we're not going to say anything. And that's exactly how it went. And I run into this guy. I worked in the building with him recently, and he saw me in the lobby. And he's such a salesman. He goes, Scott Rubin. And it took me a second. And he goes, it's so and so. And I responded, I know. Not high or low. I know you are. He didn't know that he was unrestrained. He just assumed this is how the world works. So at Booz, that guy, whatever his value is, they value that he brings in the work. He's going to get to be king. They're not going to take it from him.
Right, and they think they're entitled. It's because they're smarter, taller, and better looking, even when they're not.
But they're dangerous because they infect others.
Oh, yeah. They're loose cannons on deck, yes.
I want to add this in. I mean, there's a large cloud services company, again, I'm not going to name him, still wearing a shirt, that was trying really hard to recruit people and trying really hard to reduce the churn. And then one day when they were super successful, they simply said to the world, this is how it works. You like it or you don't. We're done adjusting it. That if you find it abusive or you find it too demanding on your life, we're the winner. And it's working. So we're stopping here. The softness ends here. Either you get it or you don't. So that's just how it is. People survive their 3 years and get out. I can tell you that Accenture was like that. There are a lot of people on their resumes with 3 years out of college at Accenture, and then they went somewhere else because they didn't like it. And the company says, sorry.
Yeah, so vesting has an incredible incentive, right? It's kind of the golden change, right? So you get people who have made it who shouldn't have, and you're stuck with them. And then you have people who are just waiting to hit the date so they can go try someplace else to see if it's going to be any better there. The politically savvy people get this, but your basic data ding doesn't. And they think it's objective. And to your point, it's not, right?
I will say at Accenture and KPMG, similar to what I saw in the military, someone will have on their bio that they were picked for the Air Force and the Army intern program. For those of us in the know, Kev, that means they're getting looked at early. It's not a joke. Someone says, hey, this person has potential to be big. So let's put him in that early rotation. And
the Astra program in the Air Force, yeah.
Yep. So, I was looking at someone's bio today for one of my clients, and they were in that. So that's sort of hint. That's why I'm a 3-star, right? That's how it happened. So the same thing happens. Colleagues that Brigitte and I know get tapped, and they're told, hey, you're in an early evaluation for this kind of work. We're going to put you on this kind of account under this kind of leader, and you're in this group where you're going to get these extra reviews.
You're a made man or a made woman. I mean, basically,
Well, they're offering it to you. Now you got to go deliver.
Well, you got to deliver, right? But you've got the opportunity, right? Early on, we picked you as a potential candidate to be somebody. If you screw up, you're out.
And
we'll find somebody else.
The bulk of the workforce are running around going, wait, that's a thing?
Well, John could talk about this, but I think this is a thing at law firms too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cut of your jib, right? If they don't like the cut of your jib, you're never going to make partner no matter what.
No, and to that team concept, they do form teams for different litigations, and the question is, do you get on the A team, the B team, or the C team? And then someone new comes in, and they haven't had their chance on the A team yet, and maybe the A team is better at bringing in business. They share it more, and so people see, okay, if I'm in that sub A team, that's my path forward, right? I don't work for the firm; I'm in that special team.
So what happens if you're not in that special team and you're okay, and you're okay just being like a C player, as they say from Caddyshack, the world needs ditch diggers too.
It's financial.
What do you do?
Those people are the financial lumps. It's a question of how little salary they're willing to work for versus what they're willing to generate supporting someone else, and are they marginally competent to be able to have their work built?
Or you shift career fields.
They become counsel. They become non-income partners.
Right.
But those people don't have the energy to shift. They don't have the energy to go do something. They're an average worker anyway.
Well, so a little history here. When they formed what was then called ASD C3I, comptroller had been in charge of IT as it evolved during the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and they decided they didn't want anything to do with it. So they handed it off to was then ASDC3I. And so all the duds that couldn't hack it in the FM world went over to ASDC3I to manage IT.
To work with Linton Wells. I remember.
Oh, Lynn Wells, he'd write those 7-page memos, but no fixed responsibility for doing anything about the stuff in the memo.
Him and Marv Langston were.
Oh, Marv. Oh, don't get me started on Marv.
So you're describing a massive enterprise that the rest of the world is going to have a hard time understanding because the DoD, the Pentagon's about policy and money, and you move around the policy and money game to people, but the commanders in the field and at the unit levels have to do the mission, break things, kill people, right? And they're, you don't want to tell them what to do too much, right? So you play this shell game at the Pentagon of how it works. I remember these days. And yeah, you do get the floaters who just exist. They existed there, now they exist here. Yes.
Well, when I was in ASDN as a contractor, I used to joke, if everybody died, the only people who noticed was the cleaning crew. Because we produced nothing of any value.
They don't do that either.
I mean, we produced nothing of value. Nobody would miss stuff that we weren't producing. And that's actually not exclusive to what's now DoD CIO. That's true of most of the OSD staff. Right.
So how is it you guys survive so long?
Well, you get hired and they pay you.
Well, so I'll put a bend on that because I'm no longer government. I'm not going back. In industry, the first time I saw it when I got out of the Air Force, I worked at a video conferencing company that went through tough times, and our stock price fell precipitously because we had a problem. There was a lump in the snake that finally popped out, and that was the end of the ride. So they reorged us. I'll never forget it. This one very senior engineer who was not well liked. They reorged us into business units. And then that was get in your rowboat. And then they sank business units. It was a way of legally, it was legally and technically the way to get. And I remember this one senior engineer goes, when he saw everyone in his boat, he was like, "Oh my God, you put me in the boat, you're going to sink," which was true. He was smart enough to know that all the miscreants were loaded into his boat called customer objectives, which was then, we don't need customer objectives. So I went through that. I watched that happen. And I think in DoD that doesn't happen. Brigitte and I both had consulted to the counterintelligence field activity, and it took the incoming secretary at his hearing, Bush's guy, what was his name? He'll come to me in a minute. But they said, "Hey, have you heard that this burgeoning activity that's trying to be an agency was spying on Americans?" And he went, "Make a note. We're eliminating that as soon as I'm done here. Once I get to my office, that dies." And it did. But it's hard to kill a government agency. It's hard for someone to shut it down. So the inertia just carries these offices and their staff forward. No one's brave enough to say, "End it." We don't need that.
So that's the what's the Parkinson's law? Yeah, bureaucracy expands to fill available space.
It'll fill the space. I honestly, I love my government and I love supporting it, but a lot of the programs, and I said what you're saying at my last place, which I'm not going to name here, are the people because we've talked about it before. It's never being recorded. We weren't being paid. We had gone months, if I remind you, had not been paid. And my deputy and I said to the director, "What would happen if we did a stop work? Really? Who would know? If we all didn't come in tomorrow and it was just the 6 of you schmucks, when would anyone know?" And they didn't like that, but they couldn't answer it. I'm like, I think we could go a while. Someone wondered if we were going to do anything. When you're that's just one place.
So that's what happened during the pandemic. They about, I don't know, year month 3 or 4, right, when we were doing alternate work schedules, they started saying, that's very interesting. Turns out we didn't need that deputy this, and after the pandemic came out, a lot of things got closed out, right? And so it was a good opportunity to clean somehow. So I think maybe we didn't cut deep enough. I guess the other question is, does every organization need some zombies?
You can't prevent it. I mean, this is human behavior, right? It's a bell curve, right? You're going to get some percentage no matter what you do. I mean, we try real hard at IDA here where I work, because we're data oriented and researchers, and we still hire non-working breeds.
I don't know how you'd not. I mean, as the saying goes, I never interview. My avatar interviews. My avatar looks much better, is thinner, and answers all the questions correctly.
Well, so we have people come in, and I've been in hiring panels, and they have a good resume, and they tell a good story, they answer questions,
Right.
but you don't want them on your project because they don't produce anything.
But it takes a while to find out that, in the
Yeah, no,
agency, they call
you're
it the
right.
hall
You've
file.
hired them, and then you discover they're kind of inert, right? And when you ask them for something, they never volunteer. When they produce something, it's not something you can use. You got to redo it. And usually we generally get rid of them at some point. But it's just, hard to target energy in the way we have a very structured hiring process.
So I have the
And
opposite problem
we can't-
because I'm
Yeah.
high disruption, right? So it's easy to hit me. I'm always, as somebody pointed out, my head's always above the foxhole, and to just lop it off real easily. But my zombies stay nice and low, so they don't get knocked off first. So you kill off your innovation, then your zombies are the ones that are taking up and infecting everybody. I wonder if I was to make some kind of smart system, like not as dumb as the JC, Morgan Chase one that looks to see if you're moving your mouse or not, but something that says, okay, this is a zombie person. What would that zombie person algorithm look for?
Well, you could, then user enterprise or user behavior. What's it? UEBA, user enterprise behavior analysis or whatever.
Mhm.
You can do that in New York Minute.
Right.
What time they spent. I had a guy who was on Y2K in the same contracting company as me. He spent most of his day surfing the web for models of Leica cameras he didn't have because he's a camera guy,
Okay.
right? So
Did he get his work done?
I'm going to throw a rock against this. And there's an episode of The Office that exactly typifies this. I've seen it in real life. So the episode is Michael Scott's boss from Manhattan calls up Jenna Fisher, the secretary, and says,
Right.
"We don't think Michael does anything." The
Right.
office manager. "We want you to make notes on him. We're ordering you to make notes on how he spends his time."
Right.
So throughout the episode, there's another storyline. She's holding up for the camera 20 minutes at the coffee pot, 30-minute bathroom break. And it's looking bad. And she's sad because she knows she's going to have to report this.
Right.
And at the end of the day, everyone's gone home and Michael's closing up his office. The fax machine's spitting something out. And a massive order's coming. She's like, "Michael, this is the biggest order of the year." And he goes, "Yeah, I would be working on those guys for 90 days. And I kind of knew it was going to pay off. And I'm glad it did. Good night, Pam." And she takes all of her notes and rips them in half and throws them in the garbage. You can't algorithm that.
Right.
The guy's a hawk. Every now and then a whale's going to come in, and you want to monitor him by his half hour. What is he doing? I would go to what John said. I'll back up a step to see, Kevin, if they taught you this at the academy. They taught us the Rommel model, that there's 4 quadrants, that the upper left is the hardworking smart. These are the rock stars. They're almost
General staff.
Right. And then you have the upper right, which is the lazy smart.
Commanders.
Right?
Commanders.
Exactly. They're gifted, but they're not going to be everywhere at once. They know where to put people. In the bottom left, you have the lazy dumb, and they're your stockpile. They're what John says. They're earning revenue. They're not going to impress you or let you down. They're not going to do anything on their own. Most of them won't screw up, but they're.
But hardworking and stupid must be taken out and shot immediately because they're dangerous.
Anybody who's hardworking and stupid is killing you. Find them and execute them. And it's silly, but I was using this model at my last gig. I use it all the time in management. Where are you?
Right.
Where are you in this matrix?
Yeah, we did. So a bunch of us, GS-15s and DOD-CIO, were working for this hardworking, stupid SES. And we all got together off the record and decided we'd go talk to the deputy CIO individually and separately and complain about a basically hostile work environment because she was hardworking and stupid. So, and we all basically said, if you're not going to do anything, we're not going to make a formal complaint, but you got to fix this, boss. So he did the right thing, called an external consultant, did a survey, and her position was declared to be excess, and she was offered a Vera Visa and was out the door. And all of us
How
went,
long did that take?
about 4 months.
How many people did you lose in that time?
Well, none of us quit because we weren't retirement eligible yet. So, we were kind of stuck waiting to be 62. But when she left, everybody left. It's like, oh, thank God. I mean, my phone used to ring and my stomach would knot up physically because she was going to get on the phone and ask me what color was Thursday. And I would.
And she did not have microdose like the.
I don't know how to answer that question. Could you rephrase it, right? And she, what color is
Thursday? Last Thursday?
Yeah.
I have a somewhat related problem, and maybe this helps in some way. I don't know. Existing project failed, and they knew the technology failed. They knew they needed a change. Change agents come in. They pick a new course. They pick new technology because they pick right. They do something new. Contract signed, and now it goes back actually in implementation, and you get those lower level zombies who don't want to learn something new.
Yeah.
And so now that the project's been delayed for over a month, the first deliverables due in a week or two, and it can't go forward because you got this zombie who wants everything to look like the system that didn't work because that's the only thing the zombie knows. Right, the zombie only knows the old system, but leadership already said we're not using the old system, and we already bought the new system. And yet it's that delay. I don't know. I would think just looking at any new technology program, anything in terms of did it actually meet its timetable? Did it actually get implemented?
Well, some of it's actually valid human behavior, right? So if you've got an iPhone, switching to an Android is majorly painful, right? I mean, just major. It's like if you do Windows, you want to go do Mac. That's like hurt your head crap, right? And if you can stall it and not have to do it, you're going to do that because you don't want to hurt your head over and over and over and over again. Every mouse click, right? Because you're not clicking on the right part of the thing because your brain's programmed for Windows. On the other hand, my experience has been if you try and change the business process, that's where you get the major pushback. So technology is used as technology is kind of used as an excuse, but it really is you don't want to re-engineer the business process because I'm happy with the old way of doing it even if it didn't work. And I actually had a couple projects now where we're documenting that on civilian personnel hiring systems.
But to the timing of it, I mean, so if someone they've delayed it another month, another 2 months, another 3 months, another 4 months. If it was urgent enough to move quickly, it seems like someone should be interested in moving it quicker. Now we have follow-up meetings. People got to fly around the country, have leadership meetings, and trying to get around the fact that there's a zombie who can't deal with change, but yet that's the analyst or whoever was assigned to the project, and they want something different than the contract officer boss.
Well, yeah, that's a generic problem. I mean, you got to basically have the authority to take those people out and shoot them. Well, and generally you can't get that because there's some legal reason for blah blah. HR system involved. They grieve. You're stuck in a assessment process, and they're still their code in the road or concrete drain plug is a great term I've heard used in DoD, and you can't get the water down the drain.
That's a good point. So what do you, I guess there's two questions I have for you. What are some novel ways of identifying and moving out the zombies that are bad for your organization? Number one. Number two, when you identify a zombie, does it matter to talk to them, or is it they're not interested?
Well, I would say they already know they're a zombie, and they're happy with it, right? They're getting paid. They're doing no work, right? They just go to meetings. PMG, as the guys say, professional meeting goer, right? And they're quite happy to play that role. And unless you have some way to sideline them or get rid of them, which if it's a GS, that's like really hard. You can give them a non-job, but they're still around on your books. You can't get somebody who can get something done. You're just stuck with them. I mean, so my peer group in DoD sale was a GS-15 was 90% non-working breeds. Right?
Wow.
They were drawing benefits. You couldn't get rid of them. Well, I take it back. Management is not willing to do the hard work to get rid of them because it takes 4 or 5 years, right, of documenting that they're a non-performer, and nobody's willing to do that work at the SES level. So the 15s that are non-performing hang around. We had that problem when I was a contractor. We had people in the company who were just not producing. But we wouldn't get rid of them.
In the private sector, you come out of a meeting with a non-producer and the person's off the case the next week, right? If someone were to gum up and throw, they don't get a year. You're off. You have a bad meeting, you're off. You piss the client off, you're off.
Yep.
And if you're not moving the ball forward, and that's this, I think, right, the financial private sector kind of motivation versus government, the motivation in government is government, right? You're going for that stability. I think if people in government knew you could be fired after a meeting, they wouldn't go to the government. Government would have to then match private sector pay.
Well, private sector is an end strength, right? There's no billets. It's we need a body that can do X. If they can't do X, we get rid of them and find somebody who can.
So the problem though in government is somebody recently pointed out to me they were very proud of themselves. They had gotten 21 new cyber professionals in their organization. It had taken them quite a long time. And this is an organization that it's 3 years to get them on. Over half of them quit in the first year.
In the private sector,
what do you do?
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was going to say in the private sector, right? Most people go to a job because they like the CEO, right? They like the founding team, they like the culture, and they see themselves in that culture, right? As soon as in the private sector, like if there was the first law firm, I'm looking at the attorneys who are partners running the firm, like I don't want to grow up and be like that. Like that's a shitty thing to be. You know, you're not going to stay in that company. You're going to go work for people who have the careers that you were aspiring to get to. The government, you don't go in aspiring to be like a person. You go in to be part of the system.
So I'm doing a study of the National Security Administration from a cyber perspective, and they have a huge problem, which is kind of like the OSC staff and other places, the contracting company I work for, where they have a bunch of really senior people. In the contracting company, they retired as 06s or 05s, and they got hired. They have 30, 40 years of experience. That's why they get hired. And they have a bunch of new hires, but nobody's 35. All right? Because you don't want to pay the money for a 35-year-old because you can hire the veteran that can bring in the business with the Rolodex. And the junior people won't hang around long enough because they don't see a promotion pathway to get to be a senior person at some point in their life and get on the gravy train. So we have this problem with the labs around the department where they have a junior person doing IT and the person lasts about 18 months and then goes and finds another job because it's not worth staying.
Right.
So they're constantly replacing these people who don't know what they're doing when they walk in the door. So you get them up to speed and they say, screw this, I'm going to do something else. And that's not, it's a pattern. A lot of the consulting firms are that way. Booze, other than the lucky idiot that got promoted VP, you're generally stuck at the level you're coming in at. You can make one promotion, maybe two. And then if you want to get promoted, you got to go some other company.
So let's compare that to the Zappos model that they tried for a little while, which was the flat model, right? Which a lot of people actually complained about. And we were working in one firm that had the flat model. I don't know. I guess it worked when there was 30 people. It didn't work so well when there was 500 people. But I mean, there's the perception of what you do, and the perception of how you spend your time, and the perception of, I guess the answer is what you bring to an hour. versus how you spend an hour, right? I'm a creative, so and I'm knowledge workers the same way, right? You do stuff maybe that takes you 8 hours, and sometimes it takes you 8 minutes, but that's 40 years of experience or whatever that goes into that. And I think it's very interesting that we sit there and try to evaluate people based on what we see today or how we perceive things today. And I'm wondering, especially in this day of AI or some of the other things that we have that are measuring some of this, how that's going to bite us in the ass or how we can use it.
So I will say, when I run a project, I've got a bunch of people on it, and I'm kind of sampling to see who can produce quality product. Not give me a bunch of crap. I need synthesized quality product. I tell them up front. So it's not a surprise. And I know it's a stretch goal for some new hire who doesn't know what it looks like. So I usually pair them with one of the senior people who does, and then I see what happens. And that's worked fairly well. Sometimes it's a measure of how much they're willing to hurt their head and get out of the comfort zone. You got your PhD and blah blah, but you don't have a career at it. You don't work outside of your degree. I mean, just don't because we don't have enough work, right? I find that there's a sharp division. It shouldn't be, but it is. Between quantitative work and qualitative work. It should be a mix of both. But the way our projects come down that I've observed is either almost all quant or all qual. Interviews, reading documents. That's the qual side, and then numbers is the quant side. And people who can bridge both domains are pros of great price. I mean, they really are. They're rare. And to your point, Brigitte, I mean, when I got to Idaho, I had to relearn my contractor thing. Is if it took you 30 minutes, you wait till 5 o'clock to send it, and bill 4 hours.
Kevin, I'm going to throw a rock. And probably right as your business includes other FFRDCs, companies that are still hiring the X's like us. In a T&M or in a cost world where you're writing study reports, you can hire those people. They can be zombies or thugs or whatever, and they're going to get a rate. I, as an engineer, prefer the current fixed price delivery contracts do something, or you don't. So I believe the government better deal with a fixed price, and there's an outcome that met the objective. And government afraid to go to those places, and a lot of companies never go because they can't possibly manage the risk. So I'm one of these people that is more of the world of fixed price delivery criteria that mattered. We get a better place. There'd be a lot of broken hearts.
Yeah. I mean, that's what John's talking about. I mean, the government game is get a cash cow, long-term contract with vendor lock, and milk it. Right. So
that's a horrible feeling, like in terms of being a defense industrial complex, because then you get run into that same sort of creature, right? You're all just a bunch of, for lack of a better term, people that can be bought at any price, and next contract will just flip you over to the next one.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing a review of the contract writing system, which is a long story. Way back when in the 90s. DOD got on the one ring all plus called Standard Procurement System.
Right.
It did a contract with AMS. Right. And that contract AMS got bought up by CACI. But that contract's still in place. So they've been billing DOD for SPS at the billions of dollars level since the 90s.
And there's millions of them.
Consolidated it.
Right.
But it's just milk it.
Right. So, I mean, I joke that if you want to see me really get irritated, it's the way that like my old company would pigeonhole people. And they're like, you're a multidisciplinary, systems engineer. I was like, fuck you. I'm a chemist. I'm a scientist. And there's a difference. But the answer is no, you're a generalist. I was like, yeah, I can do general. So I can do specific. Which direction of explosion do you want? Right. But it's really hard to provide unique needs when we decide that everybody's a peg and round peg and you got to fit in square hole or vice versa, right? So and then we get pissed off because we don't have the right person, but quite honestly we put them in there by bill rate.
Well, yeah. So I have a buddy who actually was my data guy on the Fourth Estate audit. Who's a PhD chemist from Cornell. Worked for Naval Research Lab and stuff like that. So he's a scientist.
Right.
And he gets similarly annoyed when people say, well, you're just not a scientist. It's like, no, there's a scientific method. And it's a thing. And it doesn't accept bullshit. You have to prove your work. Right? And you got to double check it. And people are going to peer review it. So if you bullshit, get caught.
Right.
That's not true the rest of the world.
Right.
So nobody's used to that level of standard of proof.
Well, I think what's worse is that we're expected to be scientific communicators in that we have to up our game to better help people understand what we know and what we do for them. And some of that looks a lot like removing all those 15-syllable words from our vocabulary.
Yeah.
I have this debate with people all the time when they talk about our telemetry. We don't need a lot of people because it's science. I'm going to give you the rules that apply. They're going to apply every single time. It doesn't make a difference who applies them. It's the same freaking rule. And it's like it should be if it's science, it should be reproducible. And that way, if it's reproducible, if something goes wrong, you should be able to check the underlying problem, right? The methodology rather, and alter it. But people are used to black boxes, they're used to bullshit, they're used to hand waving, they're used to right. They don't understand what science is.
Well, there's that great cartoon where somebody's got some equation on the board. And the professor's reviewing it says, then a miracle occurs. Could you be more specific? Right. And a lot of stuff. Well, that's a standing pattern that proliferates on incredibly all over the place. Yeah.
So I have a question in that space. We all sort of know the nightmare that we are creating or not. I joke that we complain about the Frankensteins we create while sewing them together. And
because it's on the contract.
Yes. And well, that was one of the things that I was
getting paid to do that. So you do it. Even if stupid.
So I was talking to somebody about that today or yesterday. I said, they have this special contract that, is gold and does magic stuff. And I said, but now you're working with me. And I like to make contracts do things as my husband says are not normal. And I like to bend them in odd places, right? And do odd things with them. And so that's why I love different contracts that give me those type of abilities to bend things in new ways. But that's the only way you can get just basic stuff done. Like if you ask me, like, what do? I manufacture stuff for the government in the sub 10,000 component level. And to do that, I have to have freaking, like you said, magic occurs here to get it done, which is sort of insane.
So one of the tricks I learned when I was a COR is the magic of ANCs and making things in ODC. So you bury your $450 data scientist in maintenance. As
so
an
the world's
ODC.
most expensive janitor?
because we don't have to argue with the KO about labor rates and all that crap. You just to do that as a gov, you have to have a reasonable idea of should cost.
Okay.
Right, and then have a conversation with ANC about the level of pass-through. Right. Well, you can get a whole lot done if you get the right ANC and are clever about the ODCs. Just throwing that out there as a technique, and it's legal. Then they've raised the ceiling on ANCs to like $25,000 in the first year, and then as long as you get CPARs. It's up to you and the KO how much money you can put on the contract.
But so I guess the question I would usually get is, does that make them, the CO, nervous, or is this just sort of a normal thing? Because
the KOs are relying on you to have the technical knowledge about is this a good idea? And they're happy to lay that off. They just want to cut the piece of paper and get it done, right? So as long as you're careful about how you write it up and you kind of know what you're doing, which on this phone, we all know what we're doing, right? So I had repeated success with doing that. Now, if you got the right vendor, right? It avoids free and open competition, so you can get people that can get the freaking job done, right? And you don't have to do a J&A, right? And so you can go get Scott and John and Brigida and Zach and whoever that can get things done, right? And you bury them in maintenance. You give the pass through to the contract report, the people that write the slides and stuff like that. That's the ANC. They get their money. That's the labor, and you bury everything in ODC, and then you go get stuff done. And that works really well. And the KOs don't know enough to object, and you can ride that all the way to the hills.
Do you think they feel like you're trying to do a bait and switch with them, though? Because I want to feel like that I have some level of transparency in that.
Well, that issue came up. The current contract we got, another contractor got in trouble last year on a bait and switch, where SOCOM actually sued them, which is abnormal. Knowing the product, knowing the company, they're nice people. They're totally upfront every time I've asked about their product in terms of how it worked. I think where they got in trouble was what they were selling as software was really contracting, because their algorithm wasn't working, their black box wasn't working. So what they were really doing was hiring a bunch of analysts behind the scenes who were kind of fixing it and typing it in. Problem is, it's two different colors of money in terms of whether you're buying additional analysts or whether you're buying a piece of software. So I think they got in trouble, and now there's this incredible scrutiny to make sure there is no bait and switch. But then that's the problem where a contracting officer buys X, but people want the old system. Can't you just stick in the old system instead? Like, no, I'm not going to do a bait and switch. I'm not going to actually give you a totally different product that's not going to work because you're afraid to go learn something new.
Well, that's going on with the cloud stuff, right? You want to migrate your on-prem app to the cloud, and the vendor has changed the user interface to optimize it for the cloud, and nobody wants to do that. And so you get this user-based resistance to the new project, which manifests itself in all sorts of different ways, right, of guerrilla warfare to avoid going to the new product. We went through that at IDA. We had an on-prem Concur travel solution, and we migrated to a cloud solution. And then without telling anybody, we imposed a bunch of business rules hardwired in the system. So now what used to take you about 20 minutes, it now takes you about an hour and a half. Right. And I think the fundamental motivation was better auditability, but it was like stupid. So, this is the kind of, then the people fight back, right? They find a way.
It's right. You have leadership wanting change. You have contracting that needs to do its magic to actually get the change in. You have the little zombies that then don't want change because they're in that position for the remainder of their 2 years and they know they're moving out anyway, so they don't give a shit. They don't want to learn something new. And it just, and government, I think I think it's the same, and I know it's the same in the private sector, is just not as bad because people know if they don't change with the company, they're out. right? The government folks don't necessarily worry about that because they'll just get moved someplace else.
So I have a question for you. If we were to create a new government entity and have a new set of hiring practices or a different set of contracting practices, what should they look like?
I
to
think
avoid the
that's
zombies?
desperately needed. I mean, I think a new FF, some type of research and development that has greater flexibility to bring things in and try them. If the people staffed in that have to try new products constantly. I mean, honestly, on our contract, it really should be almost try a product for 3 months, put us on a probation period, try it for 3 months, run it in parallel with everything else, and then you switch the train tracks as you go down in terms of if the people are in that mentality that every 3 months they're trying different products, they're bringing different things online. I think you won't attract the zombies into that entity.
That you have to identify who are those early adopters in many ways to get that on board.
Well, so one of the problems, you have a lot of people who say they want to solve a problem, but they don't really want to solve the problem. They want to admire it.
All the donuts I have, and also not gain weight. Damn it!
But that's why I think if there's short-term projects, if it's 3 months, if it's 3 month quarter, let's say these are and you're going to be doing 4 pilots this year on 4 different topics.
So competitive runoffs is not a bad approach. It's just most
bake-offs
people aren't competent enough to write a good contract to make that happen, right? So you do a BAA, right, and then you get multiple vendors on it, and then you kind of do competitive runoffs on ever-changing requirements and see how it works.
Yeah, but see, I don't think it should ever be stagnant. That's the problem. I don't think it should be in that government mentality where it's a stagnant, that's a contract, and then once I win the runoff, I'm good for the next 20 years. No, every year some new technology should be run against it.
I mean,
that's
it's
not how
a
R&D
5-year contract, 1 year with five options, but it's the same thing. You're right. It's just written in different language, right?
I got a 4-year contract. I mean, it's like someone can't develop better technology in 4 years. Great,
so I'll just tell you,
we should have competition.
I'm on a task with Army DevCom, CFOSR, the R&D crowd in the Army, right? And the game is you get a 5-year project approved with 5 years of POM funding, right? And then you just run with that. And if you produce something at the end, it's to get to TRL 6, which is useless. All right. Then rinse and repeat. They don't care if they deliver anything. Right. It's a game. It's a get a project established with a name on it, with an acronym, get your POM line funding, and then go through the motions. Right. And we're enabling them to go through the motions. And then at the end, towards year 4, you got to get the next 5-year project approved. That's what's going on here. So this is where I get back to, they don't care about solving a problem in the R&D community. So you got to get down near the SOCOMs who want to solve a real problem, and then you can get what you're talking about, John. Whereas if they can get out of their own way on the contracting, which they kind of can because they have their own acquisition authority, you can actually get something done.
NATO's doing something similar coming up. I think they're going for that stagnant thing. They're talking about, for this one program, doing all the pilots and demos in kind of Q1, Q2, Q3 of next year. Finding the different pieces, putting their master system together, and then kind of moving forward. It makes sense.
We did the same thing in ours, and we got 77 different projects through in 5 years at scale.
Like
but it was a lot of meeting attendings because we had to push government people to make decisions, and also we had a non-defense industrial based manufacturer working with us, whose Gantt chart never ever moved to the right.
Well, that's
so
what
when you have that.
At the end of the meeting, the apology was, "Please give us time. We're going to be slow. We're sorry. We're going to be slow. You'll get a pilot."
So what we had to do is, me and my government partner, we would sit on those government people and say, "You have to make a decision today because we have to know if we're going to put stuff into production tomorrow or the next day, and whether you want 300 or 500, I'm going to call you every hour on the hour," and I did, or he did, and bug the fuck out of you, and that's what happened. But God help me, you can't scale that.
No, it doesn't. No, because it's trust relationships, right? Mm-hmm. You finally develop a trust relationship with it. You can deliver. If they'll make a decision, they get what they asked for. And so the issue about, I don't know if I want it, but I mean, but that's a trust relationship thing, and that's done point to point, and it does not scale. right?
Right.
And it's over time, and so that's hard, wicked hard. So
Right.
when we were
But
doing
you have to build those relationships, and that's one of the things that we've been doing within our software right now is how do we build those trust relationships better? How do we build better teams faster? But also, how do we start pushing the risk down so that government teams are more comfortable with making decisions sooner?
so they're
and
not
have more
technically
data.
knowledgeable. So, and Scott knows this. I mean, you're dealing with a government crowd that is happy being ignorant and doesn't want to go through the pain of learning about new stuff. And so it's an uphill battle against the wind all day, every day, to try and teach them why the perfectly workable solution that you're trying to sell them will actually work.
Right.
Right. And it's tiring.
All three of you
But they've
guys
already
go
seen
about
everybody's sales.
All three of you guys go about this in a way that I abandoned years ago. And again, I'm wearing a corporate shirt, so I'm going to say it nicely. I'm going to help the government buy what the government has decided to buy at the point the pen is at the paper and they can buy. Prior to that, all of the biasing and leveraging and movement I can do is magic. I might or might not be able to affect the direction of the procurement, and certainly based on the size of it, how heavy it gets. Look what Jeff Bezos just did. Everyone knows he bowed out of the Washington Post decision. It was leaked out before he gave his bullshit op-ed because he knew he was going to face another Jedi. He knew that Trump, if he wins, will zero him out of the game, and they lost a $10 billion contract to be the single cloud provider, and the government went and BS'd its way into what's it called, the JWCC, right? Which now everyone's in, right? So Jeff Bezos went, all right, I'm out of this game, right? Even he couldn't change that. So all I really care about is when the government has decided to make the acquisition hit the street, can I win it? And then can I convince my company we can deliver to it? That's all I got to do. All these ideas about I'll shake and bake in a meeting or I'll make my government person yell, it's all a load of crap. It'll work once or twice in a row. It'll never work again. And the second you get a new KO or a new CO, I won't do this right now, nothing matters. The new KO is not bound to the old KO. They don't have to. That's not how it works. It's not a game of baseball. It's not a bunch of umps. You get a new one, you got to build a relationship, and that's it. So I'm going to win based on can I write the winning proposal and be awarded, and then can I deliver and make my game work? And we switch gears and we go to delivery mode. What John said, we got to deal with, not a bait and switch. But, if you think you're just going to keep winning because you're good or they like you, you're out of your mind. Accenture Accenture wrested the work away from CGI when Obamacare failed for a lot of good reasons. And they went in there and they built the winner. And then when I was there, they lost it because the government said, you've had it for enough. That's all. You've had it long enough. You're not going to have it anymore. It doesn't matter how well it's working because that's how government works. Because it doesn't look good to keep giving it to one company that's doing well. I live in that world. Okay, I'll go win something else. That's just how it is. The public feels better. The government feels better. It doesn't matter. So I can't get caught up in units of delivery and quality and speed to market and is a KO like me, and none of that matters. What's in the contract? I wish my dad was on this one. What does the contract say? What are the terms? Am I meeting them? Am I getting good CPARs? Am I getting paid? And what's the next acquisition look like? I know I sound terrible.
So, how do you work the COR to get good CPARs?
You can't always. My wife knows this. The last one I just left is a lunatic. Just rejecting invoices on 8 cents. You have a lunatic who just decides.
In WAF, you're saying no to 8 cents? Good grief! It's insane.
Yeah.
Plus, they're all perfect price contracts. So what the hell?
Yeah.
It could be a break. The
And
deliverables, the monthly report. It's
everyone watching her, including the guy we talk about, the senior guy, going, nothing we can do about it. We're not going to tell her how to do her job, right? I live in that world. So I am going to put value to my work. I am going to deliver with quality. I love my government, and I'm going to get them what they bought and paid for. What I'm not going to do is pretend I'm curing cancer, giving them greater value than they asked for, taking them in a new direction that they didn't naturally want to go. That's a load of crap. They're people like me. They're living to what they're measured to. They're measured to that acquisition.
Yeah,
success.
write a crappy contract, observe what happens.
Right. Now, if you want to renegotiate with me, okay, we want
Change order. That great
Change
picture,
order.
right? The 10-foot dinghy that says original contract and the 40-foot cabin cruiser that says
I am gonna tell the story.
change order.
I was consulting to a federal agency on a firm fixed price contract, and it said by day X, the government must present us all the hardware we could integrate with for this solution, right? Well, we had a box outside the door, and they brought the stuff. And then at day 85, I notified the government, 5 days notice, we're moving to the next phase. We go to the gold version, and that's it. People started calling the government program manager, oh, I forgot to bring you stuff. Well, the window's closing. So they brought me to a meeting where the contracts officer, jackass, says, I'm offering your company a no-cost extension. So you can work for another couple of months at this. And I went, no, I don't want a no-cost extension. I'm ready to deliver. You guys had 90 days. We're closing in on it. You gave me a bunch of stuff. We built to it. We're ready to go. Well, we have other stuff. Well, let's do a change order. Well, we can't do a change order for a fixed price contract because the beginning and the end are set. But what we can do is give you more time. I said, but I don't need more time, and I spend money. They said, that's a T&M problem. You don't have that. I'm like, no, I got to pay people to be here. And that's a real business problem. I'm not going to pay them an extra month to be here and lose margin because of you. So we ended up in this mess. There was a very large integrator that had the bulk of the work there. We were a small specialized team. And I said, what if the large large company had a contract or a task order to cover the ground that we can't? And they went, okay, we can award that. I went to Hard Times in Springfield with the two principals of that company and said, you're going to get awarded this task order. You're going to give it to me. You're going to make pass through, and I'm going to populate all the people in to do this. And they went, that sounds great. We don't have to do anything. And we did it. So flash forward. A couple of years later, I'm on staff at this agency as a government employee, and we're on a bus ride to go to headquarters. And this contracts officer's like, you know what I love to do? Take vendors, throw them into the wall, and choke them because they're all ripping you off. So I choke them until there's nothing left, and they cry mercy, and I'm listening. I finally had enough. I was like, you completely forget who I am. I said, remember that deal a couple of years back? Do you have any idea how much margin I made on that task order you gave to that other company? 4 times the margin. So I went, oh, don't hurt me anymore, government. Don't hurt me. Give it to the other company who hired me to do it at incredible rates and margin. So who lost in the end? You. You could have just modified my contract under my existing margin. We would have found a way to make it work. And you, no. So you didn't choke anybody. We have weapons too. You're an idiot. So I love my clients. I do. But there's sometimes this is how they think. This is where their head is when they start the game. You're the enemy. You're here to rip me off. Okay.
Well, so what? I don't know, Scott. I mean, my observation has been what happens is you don't get the right people in the room to write the RFP. So you don't get the right source selection criteria because nobody knows what the hell they're doing. So then you put the thing out and you end up being LPTA.
I have to say I agree with Scott on this.
I go through multiple color reviews. I get screamed at. We do wall of truth where we walk down and go, here's the 5 pages. And then I have to adjudicate every single comment. The executives used to, in the old days, we'd roll by in their chairs before it was SharePoint, and they'd go, Scott, brief your pages. I'm like, my 5 pages are on bullshit. And I was given these 5 pages and 3 graphics to do this bullshit, and they stick their Post-it notes. This sucks. I hate this. Stuff that we can't use. And then like, Scott, you have to do recovery, red team recovery. You have 2 days. Fix all of that. Right. And then we do it again and we go to the next color review. Blah, blah. And Gita knows this. I worked with her at a company in FFRDC that would write these acquisitions, which was basically cut and paste bullshit full of spelling errors and mistakes from other RFPs they issued over the years. Nobody held them to a quality standard. And I got to gently ask the idiot question, did the government really mean for me to do this? Or is this something else? Hint, this is from 8 years ago. You can't do this anymore. Oh, no. Yeah, the contractor will disregard that. Yeah, because you didn't even QA it. They're the permanent, the government is the permanent customer. They really are. Outside of USPTO and a few other organizations, the government is buy. My dad always says, and he's not here tonight, if you hire a government KO as your KO, you're an idiot. all they know how to do is buy. They have no idea what goes into the sell. They've never worked the sell side. All they've ever done is the buy side, and they're automatically biased. And I'm telling you, I'm ranting now. I deal with this by understanding this and not getting upset about it because it's my world. It's how it comes at me.
So I would argue this. You know who's paying that bill? You, me, everybody in this room.
We all are, right? It's a game.
Your tax dollars at work. Yeah.
They pay me, and then somehow in this, I'm able to help pay for the house. I don't have illusions I'm going to fix this. I don't have illusions anyone here is going to fix this.
So what happens if Trump wins? Elon comes in and he goes hunting for his $2 trillion.
It's gonna be like Twitter. All right, so like Kevin said at the beginning, I thought of this. But Kevin said at the beginning, you'll shut some things off, and it won't matter at first, right? You'll kill some things, and just many people won't notice, just like at Twitter, right? He killed a bunch of things. Some of the stuff he killed probably was useless, and then he killed a bunch of stuff that was useful, and we see it to this day. Like when I run his app, I get dead feeds, I get rotated feeds, because I know the engineers are faking it, and they're tuning it for him, and it's lost a ton of value, right? So they're just propping it up. So he'll come do that in government, and a bunch of stuff will get turned off, and a bunch of Americans will get burned, right, all over the place, and a bunch of things will fall apart like Jenga. We pull this piece out, and then all this other stuff topples because these people always did this. And he'll end up having to calm it down. Also, just so you know, John, many of the things in place were, and Kevin would say, were mandated by law. They're part of an acquisition bill. They're part of some kind of legal framework. He's not going to be able to touch them or not shut them off. They're part of what's the funding called? I forget what it's called. CHIPS. It's CHIPS funding. Can't be stopped, right? Has to be funded multiple years. It will be a crap show for about 2 years.
Well, I think Boeing's sale of its space division, right, is already anticipating some of that, right?
Boeing has problems.
I know they have problems in general, but they're also now they are the $1 billion baby looking to be cut.
They are
a target on them.
They're kind of like Lehman Brothers, right?
No.
We're going to let them go under the bus, or we're going to do federal bailout? Because this is the Rickover. It's a great Rickover testimony he did back in the day about you need technically knowledgeable people to solve hard technical problems. It's not just management. Having an MBA doesn't solve technical problems.
Yes, it does.
And Boeing has a bunch of technical problems. And somebody say, it's dogs watching TV when they were briefing the FAA about how they're going to solve the problems on the plane that keeps crashing. If you don't have technically knowledgeable people, you get bad outcomes on technical projects.
So I think that's one of the things Karen had asked in the chat was, how do we end up with some of these zombie things? And I said, are you a zombie, so you're attracted to this, or you're attracted, you come there and become a zombie? And I said, one of the things I think, there's different environments that happen. But a lot of it is just bad policy, bad management, and bad incentives. There are these little viruses that just go off and catalyze zombie apocalypse.
Bad hires,
right?
Bad hires.
Right. But they start that, and then it all just sort of slides in like a cancer. But the problem is that we become sort of colored by, the thing that we want of the day. And I wonder I wonder when people think about like where I tolerate it. And when I'm watching some organizations is the ability to tolerate it, expands and contracts with the economics right now. But people are getting that smaller and smaller, toleration time. And they're seeing people that I used to see would stay and tolerate are no longer doing that.
So we had a conversation
great,
at lunch.
My new business model loves that. But
we had a conversation the other day at lunch about essentially the level of professionalism in the building, Pentagon.
Right.
Where polite, reasoned discourse used to be the standard, pretty much, if you want to be on the team, is no longer true. And that's rare. So you go to a senior leader who is actually polite, doesn't yell at you, treats you with respect. that's now the new cool, and that's really unfortunate. So where's John Hamre, right, and his ilk, or David Berteau, who's one of Hamre's acolytes, or Ash Carter, even for that matter? They don't exist anymore.
No.
So if you're concerned about national defense, and I think most of us are, that's why we're here, you should be worried, because it's a people problem. It's not a technology
Yeah.
problem. It's a people problem, right?
No.
And so we have a people problem, and then the number of people who are willing to come into government, and take a pay cut for the good of the nation, has gone down. So what you're getting is like the B- team, to be polite. And so we're not getting the best and the brightest to help us solve the problems. And then we keep saying that we have a rocket ship to Mars by Friday, when there's no rocket ship to Mars by Friday. And now we have, at the end of the administration here, everybody's trying to get something published with their name on it so they can take credit for it on their resume. And it's all vague, aspirational, statements that are never going to happen. It's not helpful, not at all helpful. And so Houston, we have a problem. It's kind of the bottom line. And none of us can fix it. We're down the bowels of the machine. We're just watching.
We can fix it. We need a new little entity, a little skunk works that actually could play with new tech, that can do new things.
That's one of the things that I talk about a lot in my new business model that I've been working on. And it's sort of funny because the first thing I had to identify was what contract vehicle I could do that, then who was internally in the government who could protect me on that space and sort of move me through that space. So it almost doesn't matter how good my idea was or how I'd proven it over the last 5 years. It was who could protect and what models I could get to, protect me through
So
that
that's your
model.
problem, John.
through
You've got a
journey.
working solution, right? But you can't get it sold.
Well, I have a working solution that unfortunately only gets sold to people that won't tell anyone else. That's the
Okay, all right. Well, that's a different problem. All right.
Yeah.
That's a whole other world of problems.
Yeah.
I think we have not come to the place, and this is recorded, so I'll end up saying this, that the idea that government's going to innovate is probably a dumb idea. And
It's a
probably
gross
better-
conceptual error. Or, Scott, as we learned at the academy, it's called error in principle, right?
Yeah, at the
Scott,
bottom.
you keep from
EIP,
DARPA and you're saying that nasty words. That's not
And
nice.
I worked at DARPA. I was a DARPA guy, and I think the space race is long over. Government, being the big machine that made it all happen, is long overtaken by everybody else. Government should buy what's proven that works and stick to that, and put money into what's going well, instead of saying we'll build it here and make it go.
Yeah, they shouldn't be competing with the private sector. I mean, they should not be competing with the private sector in most of the R&D.
Right.
The labs really should be shut down on some level, and all that money should be sent to a little skunk works, and let that skunk works be a public-private, and let that group.
So I'll push back on that. I mean, the idea that we were buying launches from the frickin' Russians for 5 years because we shut down the shuttle program was just, from a national defense perspective, was just freaking stupid.
Arrogance.
It was idiocy,
There was also a perspective there that's unclassified, that if the rocket guys and the weapon guys in Russia had nothing else to do, they'd sell that to bad people who wanted to do bad things. So it was a little bit of.
Well, yeah, it's like, we buy uranium production from the Russians. It's one of those deals made at when the Berlin Wall came down to disincentivize them from doing nuclear weapons, that we would buy all the processed uranium from them. So there's a monster plant somewhere in Ohio that we built to do that we've never turned up because we're buying it from the Russians. Right. Despite all the sanctions we're doing against Putin, we're still buying processed uranium from the Russians.
We're down a rabbit hole, but when those secret science cities, after the Berlin Wall came down, stopped getting food and stopped getting money, right, which is what happened. A lot of those little science cities got shut off, and the scientists were like, what's my value? I could sell what I do to somebody.
Yep.
Somebody will want to know how to make this thing blow up or go somewhere. So I could go do that since my own government forgot I'm here or doesn't care. So we, like Operation Paperclip from World War II, we were giving those people things to do so that they would stay in their lane.
In their swim lane, yeah, right.
I still think you can trace the start of Ukraine war back to those RD-180 engines and the disasters and the threats that those created. I mean, it's all
Interesting.
and that's why Elon gets his carte blanche
Yeah,
since
it
he
does.
solved
It
the
does.
problem.
It doesn't all work, right? We're trying to get the middle of the bell curve. We're trying to get the fat part of the curve here. It doesn't all work. It's not foolproof. The stuff that leaks out and gets out.
I don't know. Well, guys, it's 8:30. We've gone a little over time, but this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. So we'll meet up next month, and we'll discuss more. But thanks very much for joining us tonight on a
See ya.
Friday of all things. And John, I sent you a quick message.
I'll shoot
my,
you.
my team. Okay, just give me some availability for
Okay,
an
will do.
upcoming week or so. Thanks
right.
very much. All right, guys, have a nice holiday. I'll see you after Thanksgiving.
All right, bye.
And
All right, bye bye.